everybody. This is Jess from 3D Learning Experts, and you're listening to the LD Experts Podcast, the show for busy parents who want to help their kids with learning disabilities, or as I like to say, learning differences, go from surviving to thriving. Welcome, everybody. Today is the continuation of our series of interviewing neurodiverse colleges. Today, we are meeting with Erin Schirm of Meristem. And Meristem is a program in Northern California in the Sacramento area that I recently discovered on my search for programs for my son. And so I was really excited to be able to include Meristem in our series because not all traditional colleges are going to work for all of our children. And that is the case for my youngest son. So we can learn more about their program. Thank you, Erin, for joining us today.
Thank you, Jess. Excited to be on.
So first off, can you give us a little background about how the school came to be? So Meristem was founded about 8 years ago. There's a program in England called Ruskin Mill, and that they've been around for maybe 20 years now. And they do like therapeutic craft education for adults with disabilities, adults in the juvenile detention system, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the founders of Meristem, Maureen Curran-Turteltaub, and her husband, Mark Turteltaub, were talking to Angus Gordon, the founder of Ruskin Mill, and they're like, hey, this isn't really in the United States, and how could we get it to be in the United States? And so they came together and found this property in Fair Oaks, California, and 8 years later, we're still here and trying to continue to get better at what we do. And so a little bit, the intention of the founding of Meristem was to really create a space where, you know, adults with neurodiversity, adults with autism could come and really reintegrate, retool themselves to be able to develop greater independence. Awesome. And I just have to ask, how did they come up with such a challenging name to pronounce?
Yeah, with everything at Meristem, there's subtle undertones of intention. And so the name Meristem is actually the part of the plant where the most cellular growth is happening at any given point. So it's the point just before a branch shoots off. So there's the most potential and the most activity. And I think that their intent was that Meristem would kind of represent that for the people that came to Meristem, that it's a place for a lot of inner and outer growth before they can take off on their life's path.
Well, thank you for that explanation. And now I should be able to remember the name better because the stem part was where I was struggling the most. And now I know the stem of a plant. Yeah. So it's good to have connections to things.
Cool.
So is Meristem actually a college, or how do you describe the program?
Yeah, great question. I'd say we're just a program. We're not like an accredited college. What we really do is like an individual or a client will come to us for, let's say, 1 to 3, sometimes stay a little bit longer than that, depending on the individual's needs. They'll come to our program, and our program, we call it maybe therapeutic education at some level. And our intent in our program is to really support them to go through re-step their development from 0 to whatever their chronological age is at a variety of levels. And we do that through kind of 5 modalities of life skills. So developing just the foundation for living, land, movement, and craft are kind of the inner core. So working agriculturally, getting to know your environment, your ecosystem, really being out in nature at a variety of levels. Movement, we do a lot of like circus arts,
gymnastics, aerial arts, a lot of stuff that really kind of helps you re-step and reintegrate your nervous system effectively. And then craft, we do textiles, ceramics, wood, and metals. And all of the craft work has, all of these things have a lot of fine motor movements. And the whole intent is that the movement, like our nervous system becomes way more flexible, and our creative thinking and the capacity to think is really developed in an early age through the multiple movement experiences that our nervous system goes through. And so we try to recreate a variety of movement experiences through our modalities so that it can basically kind of reset sensory systems and so on, where ultimately somebody is better able to manage the input and the output of those systems in their body. And then the last pillar of our program is self-leadership. And that's really kind of taking hold of your life, putting all four of those first together, and then determining kind of your next step, which is, hey, now I'm ready to go to a 4-year college or community college, or I'm ready to jump into the workforce and start doing an introductory job to kind of build towards what I'm looking at. So.
Amazing. Thank you for that great explanation. So, do all of your students have some degree of autism, or when you say neurodiversities, can they just have a different neurodiversity that needs addressing?
Yeah, it's mixed. We're not exclusive in that regard. And a number of our clients have some other disabilities that are kind of in line or maybe fall under IDD or something like that, intellectual disability, but aren't specifically autism. So we're open. We review kind of in depth every application that we get to just affirm, hey, is this person going to be a fit for Meristem or not? The biggest challenge, I think, for us is we offer a lot of freedom and a fair amount of freedom of choice in our program. And so it's always really important that somebody comes in with kind of a basic level of skills, because we're not equipped to support, let's say, basic bodily function needs and so on.
How can they expect them to change over the course of their time at Meristem?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say everybody's kind of working on different individualized goals at Meristem. I'll say emphatically, probably 80 to 90% of the feedback that I get from parents is, hey, this was the first opportunity where they really made a friend. This was the first opportunity where they really actually had a social group and a more robust social life. And we didn't plan on that. It just kind of naturally happens through the way we've designed our program. So that's kind of like an inadvertent, really good benefit of our program, that there's a lot of opportunities that we don't, we have the classes that work on social skills and building relationships, but a lot of our program just brings people together naturally through a social environment. And that's a big one, just to be able to move forward with greater level of social skills. But I think, to me, the biggest thing is to be able to develop the tools and the capacities to, let's say, manage anxiety, how to work through kind of the challenges that come up ultimately on a daily basis, like if I'm triggered, and how to manage that so I don't, ruin a job opportunity for myself, or, make it hard for people to be friends with me, et cetera. So we try to empower our students with the abilities and the capacities to be able to manage that more effectively. And then also, through just the middle pillars of land, movement, and craft, there's many transferable skills that we hope that, after 2 or 3 years, a person leaving Meristem is able to take that to whatever their next step is. So for example, in our garden program, students would go through planting a seed, tending that plant, watering it, helping it grow in healthy soil by, continuing to compost and surround that plant with good nutrients. And then
ultimately harvest the fruit, process that fruit, put it into a meal that we eat at lunchtime, and then maybe let that plant go to seed, recollect those seeds, and and then restart the process. And so to me, like that's a really tangible skill in the garden, but it's also what we do if you have a project that you're working on. And every step in, let's say, a project or a writing project or, starting a business, like it's a seed, right? And you got to tend it and take care of it and, protect it a little bit more early on until it really has a life of its own. So our hope is that, these things that seem like, hey, well, I'm not going to be a metal worker in my life, or I'm not going to be a gardener probably in my life. We approach it kind of in an opposite direction at Meristem that might not seem like obvious initially. It's like, hey, how do you become a better farmer? You farm, not necessarily. Our approach is we're going to help you tool yourself up in ways that are way more tangible and really help you reset your nervous system so that ultimately you end up, being able to do what you want to do. And that's ultimately our goal. And I think, we're continuing to improve our program and continuing to have greater and greater success with the students that come through. But it's as always, it's a work in progress.
Well, I love that. So do the students all take all of the classes, or is there a focus if someone's more interested in one thing versus another?
Yeah, we really encourage, particularly when you first start out, to take a spectrum of classes. I think having that mix is really good. We certainly, like, let's say if somebody's really interested in metals, like, hey, maybe focus on metals and craft rather than doing wood, ceramics, and textiles, for example. Like, there's some choice around that. And then ultimately, somebody might come in when they're, and they're here for a year and they're really rearing to go, and they're showing that they have the skills and capacities to jump up, and they might be able to specialize in something. And so, like, in our leadership pillar, we have job and college coaches that have set up volunteer opportunities and internships and job opportunities that our students can jump into to get that basic work experience. And then one of our coaches helps them put together a resume and a master application. And so if somebody comes in at that, kind of ready to go, we can support them to do what makes the most sense for them.
And do they stay there? Well, let's talk about that first. Do they stay on campus? Do they do day program? Is it both?
Yeah, we have both. So we have our main funding source is through the regional center currently, and so we are like a vendored organization with Alta Regional Center, but we also serve maybe 10 other regional centers throughout the state of California as well. So there's students from all over California in our program. And we are vendored with an 063 day program. So that goes from 8:30 to 3:30. And then we have an ILS vendorship. That's pretty much all the time around that day program. So nights, weekends, etc. And so we have probably about 50% of our students live on campus right now, and 50% of them are day program students. And so there's a nice little mix there.
So the day program students, do their families all live within driving distance, or do some of them go and get their own apartments?
Most of them live locally, so probably within a 30-minute drive, maybe a little bit further. We have not had somebody have their own apartment and come for the day program, although a number of our students do drive their own cars here. And one of the things that we've set up is some driving education on our campus. And so we're also connected with a company that teaches driving. So over the time that a student's been here, many of them have actually, got their permits and got their driver's license, and then have become more independent in that regard. But for the most part, the day students are more local. But it's to me, if there's the right fit and somebody can work that out, we're open.
Great. And so are all of your students California residents?
No, we're also open nationally or internationally. We don't have any international students, but we used to early on. Then COVID hit. It was kind of tough. We had clients from New York, California, Washington State, Midwest, Ohio, New Jersey. I don't know, all over. Right now, we have a few out of state students, and that's building up as well as we're coming back out of COVID. But we try to be a mix, and we're really trying to operate in a mix of worlds where we're open to whoever kind of is really interested in our program.
And can people who do not live in California qualify for the regional center?
That's a tough one. Probably you'd have to live in the state, would be my guess, to get the regional center services. I do know, and I don't think it's easy, but like self-determination is a more recent thing where you can basically sign up. Like regional centers disseminate this in the state of California, but self-determination is a nationwide operation or mandate. And so you can, in other states, it's probably through Medicaid or Medicare or something like that, get self-determination dollars. And basically the way that works is you work with the disability services in your state and set up a budget based on the things that are your needs and your interests, and then you basically give that money to a third party that sends it to whoever you're contracting to get what you need. So out of state, for the most part, has been private pay, which is pretty expensive, but there are those ways in which you can look for funding and resources, and we do have some scholarship money as well that we try to support as much as possible.
Okay, that's great information. You're very knowledgeable of all of this.
I try to be. It's constantly moving.
Yeah. Well, we are currently applying for the regional center so that we can afford to potentially send my son to Meristem. So fingers crossed, because it is quite expensive.
Yeah, it is.
And what training do your staff and faculty have to help these individuals?
Yeah, it's a real mix because we have such kind of a diverse program offering. And so I'd say our ILS instructors are often
what are ILS instructors?
Individual living skills instructors. So the evening part and weekend part of the program, usually a lot of them come out of college maybe with a psychology degree or something in that department. Most of let's say all of our craft instructors, I don't know that there's a metal craft teaching credential in the state of California. So most of them come out of, just foundry metal training or vocational metal training and are just experts in their area of craft. And so we're always kind of balancing, either we need to train people on how to work with the student population that we serve, or we need to train our instructors in how to disseminate the modalities that we're asking them to bring to the students. And so we're figuring out our training of instructors because it's a little bit unique, and so it's either one or the other. A few of them have been through probably a more formal educational degree in college. It's a mix, but we have a number of experts in their fields from different stuff, and a lot of them a couple of our staff member are parents of have students on the spectrum and have raised them for 20 years or whatever it is, and so have a lot of experience working with it in that realm. A number of our staff, is an interest of theirs, or they had family members, so they're exposed to it at some level, and now they're really diving into it in our program. Yeah.
And does your campus have clubs and organizations and extracurricular activities?
We really try to encourage students to do it as much as possible. Currently, the two heavy hitters are a D&D club that the students created with support from one of our instructors, and a Magic, the card game club. There's also a previous student who's doing a little bit of a hybrid situation right now, where he goes to a different day program but lives on our campus and gets individual living skills support, and he has come hang out and jam out on the drums and guitar gathering. And then, students put together events or trips on the weekends to outings, things like that. So I wouldn't say it's a formal club, but, they kind of determine the things that they want to do at some level.
That's awesome. So they're learning leadership skills for the activities that they enjoy.
Yeah, right on. Yep.
So can you provide some examples of student successes?
Yeah, sure. I'll even say, the hybrids, the student that's doing the hybrid situation, it currently starting our program, was in our program for, let's say, 3 or 4 years. One of their biggest challenges was, so appropriate social behavior and, what you can say and what you can't say to another person, along with just developing physical stamina. And now that individual is successfully engaged in, another day program that ultimately is probably going to lead to a filming job. They've been, invited out to a film site at the end of when they're finishing our day program to really work side by side with a partner of ours to, just film a commercial. And it, I'll say like what in the last 8 months, there hasn't been one incident of those, social challenges or things like that. So to me, like, that's a success. We have another student who is early on in our program who now works in our cafe, and then has her own little bakery business on the side. And so you can reach out to, I think it's Caroline's Treats or something along those lines, and order some baked goods for a party or something like that. Another one of our students started out. He actually volunteers on campus a couple of days a week, but he's an expert in Excel sheet entry and data entry on the computer, and he got a job downtown in Old Sac working at a retail store, and he's helped the person who owns that store just really get all of her details in line, and it's amazing. The adults on the spectrum oftentimes have a really unique gift in that they're more efficient than your average person might be in this one thing. And then the most important piece, though, is you just got to surround them with the right support to be able to do that. If you do that well, this one student is probably 20% faster than anyone on our campus in filling out an Excel spreadsheet. And so in this job that he has, he's basically just like accelerated, the data entry and tracking and sort of, work that can get done that was really hard for the owner. And so that, that's another great success story. There's probably 4 or 5 others, leaving our campus, getting jobs, holding down, living with previous students in the community on their own. I'd say one of our biggest successes, Harry, he left and then we hired him back, and we were lucky enough to get a $5 million grant from the state to build, it's called Breaking Barriers, and we built what we call the Transformative Autism Program, or TAP. And that program is designed to train employers on best ways to onboard adults with disabilities, particularly neurodiversity, into the workforce. And so Harry is one of our main liaisons to train employers around the state of California on how to, integrate adults with disabilities in the workforce. And, it was cool talking to the director today, because he was saying, hey, Harry took a call all by himself doing this, like no support whatsoever. And we're talking to companies like Google, Oracle, along with all of your local car washes, food banks, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a nice mix, but that to me is a really cool success story as well.
Yeah, those are all amazing success stories. Thank you for sharing them. With the varying degrees of severity of autism, are there challenges between the people who perhaps seem less severe versus the ones that may seem more severe?
Yeah, totally. And it's a complicated conversation because I feel like the political correctness around it is constantly changing. Like the term we're using is greater support, less. I think that's right. Less support, more support, less support, something along those lines. Yeah, it is at some level, like, I don't know if this is a popular description, but the way we experience it oftentimes in Meristem is we're working with somebody in our clients that often is inhibited at some level of development, and maybe in a number of areas, right? So let's say the 5-year-old didn't quite catch up with the 21-year-old body, like emotionally or cognitively, or the 14-year-old didn't quite make it all the way to 21 internally, but externally I'm operating in a 25-year-old body or something like that. And so what we try to train our instructors to do is to understand pedagogically in the curriculum how you would present information to somebody who's presenting at any given point, like how I would have a conversation with the 5-year-old, the 14-year-old, the 21-year-old, all at the same time based on what's coming out. And I know that it's like, hey, I'm a 21-year-old, I'm not a 5-year-old, I'm expressing yourself. But, and it to me, I try to speak of it really objectively. We're not saying you're a 5-year-old, but what we are saying is there's behaviors that come out developmentally at 5 years old naturally, or 7 years old, or 14 years old. And we're just saying, hey, that's coming out right now. Like, instead of talking to it like an adult, maybe I need to talk to it more like let's say when I work with young children, it's like, let's bring in the imagination. Like we don't need to get too conceptual right now. We need to experience it. We need to explore it. And so our approach has always been at Meristem to really start in the experiential side of things and then get to the concepts through the experience. And so with it's the same principle with young children. You just want to do more and they learn through emulation. And so it's the same thing with our students. So the ones that, are further along in their own development, you can engage them at a conceptual level in the craft. The ones that haven't, it's not getting in conceptually, then we really try to engage them experientially a lot more, to where those experiences lead to the aha moments that make the concepts that we kind of all navigate by on a daily basis. And so it's not easy. It's just like a teenager not wanting to hang out with your 5-year-old brother all the time, right? Like there are those social tensions sometimes, and we try to help our clients navigate that spectrum, because I think we can fall prey to kind of a social, like, hey, I'm going to be in this particular group because I'm this type of person. But the reality is you're always coming across people of a variety of mindsets or thoughts or ages, et cetera. And, ultimately developing flexibility around the engagement with anyone is really important. And so we try to offer, like, let's say classes, I don't like the word level, but let's say step 1, step 2, step 3, step 3 being like way more like higher, like production and work related and higher expectations, whereas step 1 is just like, hey, exploring the material and really engaging. And so we try to have those levels of class, or those breakouts of class progressions, so we can meet a variety of needs while also kind of bringing them together and just making a nice weave of kind of the whole level of capacity of our student body.
Well, it sounds like you really addressed the elephant in the room that I find as a parent of a neurodiverse child. I mean, I have multiple neurodiverse children, but my youngest one in particular has lots of neurodiversities, and we just don't really, we talk about the academic challenges, but not as much the autistic challenges that are really a bigger social issue, and at this point, since he is an adult, are more of the issue. And it sounds like you really address that and I assume help them work through it within themselves so that they can function better in the world.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and to me, like, we've kind of gotten to a place where it's sometimes a little bit risky, but we just have to try to be as transparent around the things, that come up. And I think the more transparent you are, and to me, like, the more real about it, like, this isn't like, it just is the thing it is, and it doesn't define you. There's been a number of students that have come through that the label autism, for example, is like, that's my identity, and they either reject it and they don't want to ever talk about it, or they like overly embrace it. And I don't think either one is maybe the smoothest path to walk on. And so, like, we try to help, let's say in the case of where I reject it, like, how do you understand this thing? Like, a label is not me. I can outgrow this label. Likewise, I need to understand kind of what the diagnosis means and why somebody's, trying to describe, hey, a challenge that I'm having in this way. And then how do I work with that? And so to me, it's a lot of learning, knowing yourself, knowing the habits that you operate under. And to me, like, we have to have transparent conversations, with the clients. An example, I had a conversation with a client the other day. Really brilliant, really good at figuring out all the little loopholes and everything. And at the end of the day, I had to just have a straight, like, these are the non-negotiables. And I understand from your perspective, like, you see it this way, but we are in a two-way street. Like, freedom comes with responsibility, and there's got to be communication between the two of us so you can operate in your freedom, and Meristem can, operate around it, us being the responsible party for you ultimately if something happens. And so it's really, I don't know, it's really great work in and around diving into questions that sometimes society doesn't want to dive into, or sometimes the traditional education system doesn't really want to get to the heart of the matter. And we've just had to say, you know what, at the end of the day, like, it's not safe to go out into the world and navigate without getting into these conversations. And so we try to go there as thoughtfully and holistically as possible.
I love that. Do you have a personalized plan for your students to develop academic success or create a career goal?
Yeah, definitely the career goal. I'd say, so in our program, we have currently 4 student coordinators. And so it's kind of similar. So regional center has service coordinators that carry, a caseload of clients. We kind of do something a little bit similar in our program, where our student coordinators maybe have a caseload of 10 to 12 of our clients, and they are like really help the clients in our program navigate their journey through Meristem. And so that's going to start out with, at the beginning of every semester, here are the class offerings, what makes sense, here's the feedback from instructors, set what goals do you have based on your IPP or IEP coming in, how are those goals progressing, how are you making progress, does this goal make sense anymore, hey, we started with this goal, but all of a sudden after 6 months we're seeing these other issues that are coming up, why don't we set some goals towards that, and then maybe we get back to this other goal. And so our student coordinators really support the kind of person-centered part of our program to help guide our clients through what's going to help them. We are like really experiential based, so we really try not to get into the heavy academic side of things, particularly early on. That being said, as a client gets to, let's say, advanced herbal arts or advanced metals, you're now looking at the heating temperature of metal. You're looking at in like complicated distillations or recipes for salves and balms that you would use for wound healing that you can sell on the market based on the specs that you have to hit to be compliant with FDA, for example. And so to me, like, we haven't focused a ton on reading and writing or math. We do some math, let's say, in economics and our living skills part of the program. Our hope is that through kind of the experiential experience that those pieces kind of come together, and it's something we're always working on and trying to figure out. But that's kind of where our program's at right now.
Well, and that's what I loved most about it when I came across Meristem online, because my youngest son wants to learn culinary art, but isn't ready for all the high academics.
Yeah.
Because of all the different learning challenges that he has. And do you collaborate with community organizations and employers to provide internships and other career-related experiences?
Yeah, totally. So like we have a partnership with Fair Oaks Parks and Rec, just as an example. So like they use our campus, our instructors teach for them. We work with Sacramento Waldorf School, which is next door. So we have kind of a space exchange as well. Their students engage with ours. We have volunteer opportunities at FEA Nature Center, at Mission Oaks Park, where our students go out and just help out with projects in those parks every week. We have a farm that we go to help out. One of our culinary instructors has his farm, and so our students can go out there once or twice a week to just be on the farm and help out and learn, taking care of animals and so on. We've had students do internships at Food Bank. I think it was the Orangevale Food Bank. We have Shadow Glen Stables, working with horses, volunteer opportunity. We have a volunteer opportunity at, it's like the Folsom Sports Complex. I forget the exact name of it, but it's basically learning maintenance and so on around there. And then our TAP program has hundreds of job connections. So if it's right, Shangri-La is a restaurant in the Fair Oaks Village. One of our students has a current internship / job there and does all the juicing for them. So, if you're drinking a cocktail at Shangri-La, Meristem juiced, is flavoring your drink at some level. And then we have our own internship. So through the TAP program grant, we are able to provide paid internships in our program. So like, for example, this summer, we're going to have culinary internships where you work in our cafe that's open to the public on Fridays. We're going to have working at a daycare center internship during the summer. And we're kicking off working with the River Cats, so selling in one of their vendor stands at the River Cats games a couple times a week as a possible job. And then we have kind of like it's not a breakfast, but we have a B&B kind of on our campus. One of our dorms, we've just turned into that. And so students will kind of learn some hospitality things through an internship managing that this summer.
Wow.
So a lot going on. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what your enrollment process is or requirements are.
Yeah. So usually, somebody reaches out. We've gone in the habit, because you come to Meristem and not to toot my own horn, but it's a pretty cool place. And we're really lucky to have the campus that we have. It's 13 acres, beautiful buildings, wooded, trees, garden. It's really nice. And so we kind of realize like we generally are willing to give tours to anyone, or, come to events, come to the cafe, check out Meristem, but we usually ask, hey, what somebody at, what level of, support do they need? And usually if somebody needs a lot of one-to-one support, they're probably not quite ready for Meristem. Our programs are ratioed more at a 1-to-2, small group setting. We do have one-to-one ILS, but for the most part, we're looking, like we ask for documentation and then we look into, hey, is this going to be a good fit? If we think it's a good fit, maybe you come for a tour. If it feels good for everybody, we do a pre-enrollment visit. So it's a 3-day. If you're looking just at the day program, it's usually, 3 consecutive days where you have a schedule of classes. You go through our program for 3 days. Our instructors kind of get to see, your idiosyncrasies and your strengths and the nuances. And then we kind of determine, I think this is going to be a really good fit. We can definitely support, this individual. And then we offer enrollment. If you're going to do both dorm and day program, you do a PEV in the evening as well as the day at the same time. And so you stay in the dorms for 2 nights and are in the day program for 3 days to basically do the same thing. And so, after that, we offer enrollment, and then, enrollment continues. And we used to be like a fairly strict 3-year program. I recently rewrote the program designs to be more based on individual need. And we're like, one of the things we found earlier in our program is the transition piece takes a lot longer than I think we thought initially. And that was, hey, if you do 3 years in Meristem, like you might be ready to make the transition, but you can't just jump in. You can't just dive into the transition with the population of students that we're working with. And so this is where we've started creating these hybrid options where somebody maybe continues to live in the dorm and then has maybe a job or goes to college and then comes back. So there's support, and then ultimately maybe transitions to their own apartment. We are vendored for ILS off of our campus, but we haven't quite worked that detail out in our program yet. So we're not doing it at this point in time. But yeah, that's the rough enrollment process.
And so the program is quite costly. I mean, it would add up even if you have regional center funds. How do families usually afford, it sounds like 3 to 5 years at the program?
Yeah, it's really been limiting for us in that regard. Like that, for the most part, when Meristem started, it was for the wealthy at some level. Like they were the people that could afford it. We recently, when I first kind of became the executive director, made a decision to say, hey, it used to kind of operate where there was some regional center support and then there was some private pay, but we decided that if you're a regional center client, you pay nothing for the day program. It's just what we get reimbursed for regional center and for ILS. So if you're a regional center client, those two pieces of the program are covered. And then you have the dorms, activities, stuff that you pay for, which is something around $30K a year. And like the student who's doing hybrid is able to get like CalFresh and draws on Social Security. And so ultimately doesn't end up paying that much because he's been able to access that level of support from the state. And so we try to work with individuals on that sort of thing. I think it was a big step to go from, like, let's say our current, if you fully pay private pay, $97K a year, which is, it's outrageous. And then, but that's the cost of running the program. We're not making money. We're often in a deficit. We're constantly trying to figure out, like probably our, 50% of our income right now is grants and fundraising. And so, we try to give out scholarships as much as possible. We try to create money to give scholarships to people, but doing disability services in the state of California isn't easy. And we want to do it at a high level. We believe in, what we're attempting to do in terms of it takes skilled individuals. It takes, a lot of hard work, and a lot of resources to help somebody get to the ends that we're looking for. And I think that, to me, ultimately, if there's a way to afford it 3 years down the road, it makes it worth it. But it's not easy. And so we're always trying to figure out, I think, like some of the ideas that we have are, creating an endowment that, gives us money and makes the program a little bit cheaper. I know, like, long term, if we could figure out how to make it free, we would. But it's going to take a lot of creative thinking and putting other sources of revenue in place that can offset the operating cost, of the program. And so we're doing our best. And we hope we can just continue to get better to make it more available to everybody.
And how many students are there on campus in total?
We're at 41, I think 41 right now. We're looking at probably 43 for the summer, and our goal for fall is 50. And I think once we hit 50, we're probably going to draw some or make some wait lists at that point, just so that we can really kind of figure out what it means to operate the program at a capacity of 50. And, to me, you want to, again, we're always weighing quality and quantity in our program, because quality is
really important to us. And so we're always having to make kind of decisions like, we could probably jump up to 60, maybe even 70 in a year, but can we ensure the quality that we want to continue? And that takes time to perpetuate and scale. And so, we're working on it, but our hope is to kind of get to that 50 mark and then reevaluate.
And how many beds do you have?
Yeah, we have, let's say we have 2 dorms that have capacity of 24. So we have their units of 6 rooms and 2 bathrooms, a common space and a kitchen. All the rooms are individual. So like everybody gets their own room, but then they share a bathroom, common space and a kitchen. And so our total dorm capacity is 48. We have 6 additional rooms in our bed and breakfast, but we're kind of using that as a bed and breakfast right now. So it's probably 48. And then, it's quite an experiment to put, let's say even 6 or, let's say 24 in one dorm total adults on the autism spectrum in one space like that. And so, we're always cautious in terms of, making sure we really have it dialed in before we just max out our dorms at some level. Just because, having 6 people living in a space versus like a number of our dorms have, let's say 4 people in them right now, which is a lot less negotiation than 6, for example. And so we're kind of building up the dorm piece slowly.
Perfect. Thank you so much for answering all of my questions and so in depth, and gave me a much better understanding of the program. And I'm really excited for our tour next week. So thank you again for taking time out of your busy day to share with my audience.
Yeah, totally. Appreciate the opportunity. Excited to meet you in person next week. Please come. If I don't catch you, I'll have Chelsea make sure that you stop by, say hi so that we can connect in person. And thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about Meristem.
Yes, absolutely.